Howdy everyone. For today's Jolly Lark, I'm going to show you how to take these cool pre-colored printed cargo containers and dress them up with some rusty, crusty, grimy weathering in just a few minutes using a couple of different techniques. These containers are a new release from Monster Fight Club. It's got 5 in a box with some cool Cyberpunk logos on them. Thanks to them for sending me this box to check out and try out some painting tricks that I had an idea for. Each box set comes with 5 different containers. They come disassembled, 5 different colors. So something that's kind of cool about these is that you can use them right out of the box, just dump out the pieces, and they're basically, ready to go. There's a minimal amount of assembly required, but the sides just clip into the bottoms like so. They have a nice positive click to them, a little bit like putting together, a toy brick or something. The top clips on to the sides, and then there's ends that clip in to the open ends. One of the ends is solid, the other end has 2 doors that just snap in there, and really no glue required. I feel like this seems pretty sturdy. You certainly could glue it if you just wanted to protect it from getting dropped or something, but so with that, you've got a colored container that has a cool Cyberpunk logo printed on the side, and doesn't take long at all to assemble a whole set of these. And if storage space was an option, you certainly could unassemble them in between uses. I might end up gluing mine together just to make it less likely that they fall apart during a game or something, but you certainly don't have to. So I think the idea behind these is that they're different colors already. They're made out of different colored plastic. They've got the logos printed on the side, and you could just get your set assembled and have some ready to play, no paint needed containers, which is cool. But with a few quick tips and tricks, you can take one of your bare plastic containers, save all the details, save the logo on the side, and give it some cool weathering effects that'll really make it look like a finished piece of scenery on the table. Blend in with all your cool painted models. So let's dive in. I'm going to show you a bunch of cool weathering tips you can use on these containers, and maybe you can use on some other scenery too. So first off, we're going to grab a little sanding file. This is a little hobby file. You could use an emery file, a little piece of sandpaper, anything that you've got some abrasive grit on. So taking that and just sanding the edges of the container a little bit. The nature of the plastic is that it'll get a little bit lighter when it's sanded. So you can see just by giving the edges a quick once over, it's almost acting like a little bit of an edge highlight. And by roughing them up just a little bit, gives the impression of some wear and tear. So given that you're using the pre-colored plastic, just lightening the edges of the container a little bit with a piece of a file or sandpaper is a nice quick trick to give a little bit of weathering to these containers. You can do a quick pass on just the very edges, or you can go in and add some scrapes and scratches all over the container. And anywhere that you add some little scrapes and scratches, the plastic's going to look just a little bit lighter. The other thing you can do with your sanding stick is just kind of scrape at the printed logo a little bit on the raised edges. This ink that's used on the containers, I'm not sure exactly what that is, but it seems pretty sturdy. Just scratching at it with my fingernail or anything isn't going to take it off. But going in with an abrasive sandpaper, I think this is an 80 grit sanding stick, you can take off the ink from the plastic and just a little bit, revealing the color of the plastic underneath. Again, just kind of adding some of those wear and tear effects to the logo. You can see it's not coming off. It's sturdy, but a little bit of sandpaper will scrape it off nicely. Since we're dealing with this pre-painted logo, we're almost unpainting it a little bit. And you can just do this to your heart's content. You can take off as much or as little of the logo as you'd like to simulate the wear and tear that the containers are going to have being, shipped all around the cyber worlds. So this does create a little bit of dust when you do it. So just grabbing a cheap makeup brush that's clean. Just going to give the whole thing a little swipe with the makeup brush to make sure there's not any plastic grit kicking around. Before I'm going to go in with some brush on primer. I'm using the Pro-Acryl Brown Black, which is a nice kind of dark but not pure black color. And since we're dealing with the colored plastic here, using brush on primer is a great trick to let the paint stick to the unpainted plastic while letting the color of the plastic shine through. Now, if you don't have any brush on primer, you could do a similar effect by spraying the entire container with an enamel clear coat. That'll stick to the plastic okay, and then we'll give a surface to a normal paint to adhere to. But I was really trying to make this quick and easy, no spray paint needed, just something you can do at your desk. So all I'm doing here is very messily applying a load of the brush on primer and then taking a dry shop cloth paper towel and wiping it off. It is important to use the blue kind of shop cloth paper towels that are the lint free paper towels. You don't want to leave little paper towel hairs all over the place. But you should be doing that anyway for any paper towels you're using with painting, I think. So this is super quick. I mean, it really is just a fat brush and a paper towel, brush it on, wipe it off. This is a trick you can use on other pre-colored miniatures as well. If you're playing board games or something, this is something you can use to put some kind of shadow and a little more definition into the cracks of a miniature and give something that's a one solid color a little more depth and detail. So put it on messy, wipe it off quickly with the paper towel, and you get something that approximates, very quickly get something that approximates kind of a layer of grease and grime and dirt that this sort of shipping container would acquire throughout the world. So these shipping containers are great for modern games. I could see these being used in lots of different modern superhero zombie games. They're designed for Cyberpunk. These are the Cyberpunk red logos, but really could use them for anything. And how much grime you leave in the cracks is really up to you. I don't know that there's too much. I'm just trying to give them a good swipe and not leave too many obvious streaks. But even a few obvious streaks, it's okay. If you want to dampen the paper towel just a little bit, that'll take off even more of the paint. If there's an area like the logo where you don't want much brown on it, that's fine. And you can even, like I'm doing on this one here, you can really paint the primer all over the back. You can put a pretty good coat of the primer on and still wipe most of it off. Really super quick and easy grimy effect. And again, thing to remember, using the brush on primer, the primer is designed to stick to bare plastic in a way that regular paint is not. So this isn't necessarily going to work with just regular brown paint. You might have some flaking or cracking as it dries. So I'm just going over all the sides of the container. I'm not worried about one of them drying before going on to the next side. Doesn't really matter. Just block in some grimy bits. Because, you're going for the dark, grimy, gritty, used look. And so as you go, some of the paint on the paper towel is also going to is going to get transferred onto the container, which is great. So it just adds another layer of greasy griminess. For the top areas of this container, the paper towel didn't work great for getting in those cracks, but just a little Q-tip makeup applicator works well for swiping in those top cracks. So there you go. Again, there's not really such a thing as too much. There's not really such a thing as too little. Whatever effect you kind of stop once you're happy with what you've got. And we'll move on to the next trick. For this, we're also using a brush on primer. This is a Vallejo kind of red-brown. It's a terrific rusty color. And to make this work and make it look organic and natural, we're going to grab some extra foam pieces from some figure cases. You rip apart any old sponge you want, but figure case foam works well. And with the ripped end of the foam, I'm just going to dab on some of this red-brown to create patches of rust on the container. And probably the last time I'll say it, but just to reiterate, these are all using brush-on primers. Primer is a special type of paint that's designed to stick to things, to have better adhesion to bare plastic, metal, resin, and whatnot. And so if you're painting on bare plastic, you want to use primer of some sort. Normally you'd spray the whole miniature with primer and then paint on top of that. But if you want to paint directly on top of a bare miniature, using colored primers is a good way to do that. And it's just perfect for this sort of project. Now, you can go light, you can go heavy. Now, on the door here, I'm going to really go all in on the rust. The doors are an area of a container that get a lot of use with opening and closing and a lot of handling. So we're going to really go heavy with the rust on the doors, which I think is going to be a neat effect. The red-brown color also looks good against the green. On the red container that comes in the pack, I probably won't use quite as much of this rust effect because I don't think that red-brown is going to show up quite as well against the red plastic. But just, use your judgment there. It'll look fine. Again, put it little as much as you want. There's no right or wrong amount. And so once I'm done with this, I'm just kind of look it over and just see if I missed any spots with the sponge and the paper towels. Those are both very quick techniques and even faster if you're not recording the video. So So I'm just gonna grab an old junky brush, mix a little bit of water into the the brown black primer, and just kind of streak that into some of the cracks that got missed by the paper towel. The watered down primer works fine if it's in a crack like that, kind of at a junction. You generally don't want to water down the primer over flat surfaces. You'll get some kind of weird effects as it dries, but just placing a little bit of the primer in the crack, it'll still stick fine as it dries. It'll kind of adhere to that right angle that's formed there. So next up, I'm going to grab some silver brush-on primer. Now for this step, largely the silver is going to be going over areas that I painted the rust, so it's not as important that it be a primer, but since I had some brush-on silver primer, I'm going to go ahead and grab that. Using the same sponge painting technique as I did with the rust, I'm going to sponge on a little bit of silver onto the areas of rust. Sponge painting works great. It's a little bit like dry brushing, where it tends to pick up the raised areas of the miniature. You can see on the door here, it's not getting into the cracks and crevices so much. It's just kind of grabbing onto the raised areas. So if you sponge on the silver with a very light touch, you can use that to just get a little bit of silver on the raised areas, which will have a more naturalistic look. Because this is primer, you can swipe it on wherever you want. Kind of put a streak of silver all along the top of the container there, just like something scraped all the paint off of it. Again, just keep going until you're happy with what you've got. No, not too much, not too little, whatever floats your boat. So there we go. In just a few minutes, we've got our green container weathered up. This is really fast. Recording things always a little bit slower even. This is just a few minutes and 3 colors to give this green container a really nice, realistic coat of weathering. And you can really see the difference in the containers here. Different colors, obviously. But the green one really looks like it's been around the world a few times, where the blue one looks like it just came off the factory floor. And in general, when you're playing a war game, you want a little wear and tear, a little rust, a little dirt. Kind of helps all the scenery blend in and look like it's part of the sort of battle-torn, war-riddled world that we're playing games in. So I wanted to show you a little bit of the grime on another color, just to show you that this brown-black color really is kind of a nice universal grime color, but we'll go through all of the steps on all 5 containers. We'll kind of jump around a little bit, but all in, it took about 40 minutes to paint up all 5 of the containers. Like I said, if I wasn't recording, it probably would be even a little bit faster. But this is an easy after-dinner project to weather up some containers for your game table. So here's a side-by-side of the blue before and after weathering. So even just that, even if you did nothing but that, I think that really helps the containers fit into a painted tabletop and where you're playing with painted miniatures. So you can see here, though, on the darker black container, the grime still adds something, but the grime is actually a lighter color than the container itself. This is so fast and easy to do. I went ahead and did it on the black container too, but it's a much less dramatic effect, like you can see there. But on the other hand, the silver primer really looks great on the black. The silver really pops against the black container. So I'm going to vary what I'm doing from container to container depending on the color of the container itself. So on this black container here, I'm going to use the silver primer much more heavily. Really put a lot of streaks of silver to make it look like it's a metal container that's been painted black, and some of the black paint has been scraped away with the wear and tear that the container has seen. And just like you saw with the silver there, if I make a little mistake, I put it on a little heavy on the door mechanism there. That's fine. Just like we did with the grime, you can always just give it a quick swipe. It's not, until it's dry, the primer is not stuck that well, which is what lets us rub it off so easily, but it's pretty sturdy once it's dry. If you really want to go heavy on the rustiness of the containers, once the red-brown primer is dry, or once it's almost dry, you can grab a little bit of a bright orange paint. It didn't have a bright orange brush-on primer, but that's okay, because this is just going on top of the red-brown primer. So similar to, just like we sponge painted the original rust color on, I'm going to grab some bright orange, in this case Pro-Acryl Orange, but any bright orange will do. Grab another clean piece of foam, and I'm just going to lightly dab a little bit of bright orange speckles onto the areas of the red-brown. And this is just a quick and easy way to create an even more kind of decayed, rusty look to the miniature. This is especially important in big areas of rust. You can see I really went heavy on the red-brown color on the side of this gray container, and adding this little bit of lighter orange kind of breaks up the area, adds a little bit of visual interest, and really makes it look like it's heavily weathered. So there you go. With just a few more minutes, you can turn these ready-to-go containers into something that really looks terrific on the battlefield. So if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments below. Love it when you hit like, hit subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Thanks again to Monster Fight Club for sending me these containers to play around with. And we'll see you next time for another Jolly Lark.